Hey y'all, Southern Style Gaming here, and today I just want to talk about some funny parallels that I've kind of noticed between open world games and westerns. Now, way back in the day, back in the early days of Hollywood, back in the early days of cinema and the early days of television, the western dominated everything. It was such a romanticized period of American history. It was such a fantastic setting that everybody enjoyed. And, just you could really do a lot with it as well. I think that's sort of why it was so popular. Because, yes, it was a romanticized setting, but at the same time, you could really do a lot with it. You could have a drama, you could have a romance, you could have an action movie. You could do all these different things with it. And in much the same way, I think we saw the open world game sort of assert that same kind of dominance in the gaming market over the last 10 to 15 years or so, because in much the same way, many different games can sort of fill the mold of an open world. You can have an open world game, and it could be a first-person shooter, or it could be an action-adventure, or a fantasy RPG, There are a lot of different kinds of games that can fit the mold of an open world and still work. It's not necessarily a genre. In much the same way that the Western is not necessarily a genre, the Western is a setting, really. And you can have different genres within that setting. In much the same way, the open world game is more of a formula. And, you can take many different genres of games and fit it and plug it into that formula, and it can still work. However, as of late, much the same way that we saw westerns sort of taper off, and I don't know if die is necessarily the right word, because they're still making westerns now. They're not nearly as successful, but at some point the western just stopped being as interesting because people just sort of got tired of that setting. In much the same way, I think the general gaming community has just kind of gotten tired of open world games. I think over the last couple years, we've sort of seen where, open world games have started to taper off a little bit. For a while there, it seemed like everything was open world. Of course, you've always had your open world games like Rockstar. They've always done open world, like Grand Theft Auto, the Red Dead Redemption games. I know Red Dead Revolver wasn't technically an open world game. I've never played it. I just know it's not open world. But, I know the Red Dead Redemption games are really quite far removed from Red Dead Revolver anyway. I don't really know if I'd even consider them the same franchise. I know technically they are, but they're almost nothing alike from what I've heard. But, you're always going to have those kind of games where, they were made as open world. The Grand Theft Auto games were pretty much always open world, at least from GTA 3. I don't know much about the first two games, but I know at least from GTA 3 and San Andreas, Vice City, all that, from that point forward, they were always open world. So, Rockstar sort of built themselves on that. You can say much the same of, like, Bethesda and I think BioWare, or I think BioWare is the one. No, actually, I think Bethesda makes Fallout. But, you've had the same thing with, like, Fallout, Skyrim, those kind of games. They were built on being open world. But then, you also sort of saw the trend of other game series sort of jumping on the wagon of open world games, like Legend of Zelda with Breath of the Wild, Halo with Infinite. And granted, both of those games are good. I don't think those games are bad because they became open world, but I do think it maybe sort of took something away from what made those games kind of special, kind of unique. And, I do think that people just really started to get tired of open world. And I think that's why we've started to see, slowly, the industry has just moved away from it. I think over the last couple years and going forward, much less, which Hogwarts Legacy was a huge success, I know that. And Hogwarts Legacy was open world. But at the same time, that game was pretty much designed from the ground up as open world. It wasn't like being sort of pushed into that formula just for the sake of it. So I do think I could see a case for Hogwarts Legacy being like an exception to the rule here. But for the most part, most of the successful games have been linear, story-driven type games, or they've even more gameplay based stuff. Like, I just think that we're really going to see open world games sort of die off in much the same way the Westerns have. There are always going to be those games, just like there's always going to be Western movies and, maybe a Western TV show made every now and then, It's going to be there for those that are in that crowd of people that just really like Westerns in much the same way. There are always going to be people who really like open world games, and so there are going to be games that fit that crowd. They are going to be made for those people. There are always going to be people who like Elder Scrolls. There's always going to be people who like Grand Theft Auto. There's always going to be people like me that absolutely love Red Dead Redemption, and if they come out with a Red Dead 3, which I don't know if they will or not, I really don't think they should, honestly, because, really, what would they do with it? But, there are always going to be those people that will enjoy those games. And some people just like open world games, for the way that the game is set up. But overall, I do think that the general gaming population is kind of fatigued with open world. And, I think that's why we've seen it be less prominent the last couple of years. In much the same way that Westerns just slowly tapered off as the general public's interest in them basically died off. So just let me know what you think. Tell me if you think I'm an idiot for this comparison. I'm sure I stumbled over my words a little too much. But I do hope that at the very least I was able to make some kind of entertaining point. Maybe it was something interesting. Maybe it's something you've never thought about before. Maybe it's something you have thought about before and, you've just, never heard someone make the comparison. And, maybe you just find it interesting. Maybe you disagree, but you find it interesting. Just whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment. Leave a like if you like it, whether you agree or not, And if you want to, leave a comment suggesting something that maybe I should talk about, maybe just an idea for something. At this point, most of my videos are just kind of rambling videos about a general topic, and, just whatever comes to my head is what I say, so, it's not scripted, it's not really necessarily following a formula, but, just any general topic that anyone might want to see me cover, just leave a comment if you feel like it, leave a like, subscribe, because I'm going to try and, keep these videos coming on a consistent basis, so subscribe if you like the content that you're seeing. Other than that, I think I'm going to leave it here. So with that said, I hope y'all have a great day, and God bless.